Today's devotion is asking you the question, are you an actor? And that is the title of today's devotion. Are you an actor? We are on day 158 and we're on June the 7th. And today's morning rinse is Jeremiah 41 through 43. And our featured verses include several of them. We've got Jeremiah 42, 5 through 6. Jeremiah 42:10, and then we've got Jeremiah 43:2. So we've got 4 featured verses for today. Then they said to Jeremiah, "May the Lord be a true and faithful witness against us if we do not act in accordance with the whole message with which the Lord your God will send you to us. Whether it is pleasant or unpleasant, we will listen to the voice of the Lord our God, to whom we are sending you, so that it may go well with us when we listen to the voice of the Lord our God." Then Jeremiah said to them, "If you will indeed stay in this land, then I will build you up and not tear you down, and I will plant you and not uproot you, for I will relent concerning the calamity that I have inflicted on you." Azariah the son of Hoshaiah and Joahan the son of Koreath and all the arrogant men said to Jeremiah, "You are telling a lie. The Lord our God has not sent you to say you are not to enter Egypt to reside there." The passage in today's featured verses is a classic example of hypocrisy. We read today in this story that, these guys said that they would do something that Jeremiah said, but then they went on their word. Well, the word hypocrite is actually rooted in the Greek word hypocrite, I believe is how it's pronounced. And that word actually means an actor. When I think of a hypocrite, and probably you can relate to this, and pretty much all my life, every time the word hypocrite would come about, it is bearing this negative behavior. And as an example, someone might be someone who is caught in an act that goes against what they have said that they morally display, and yet they're acting in a whole completely different way. It's when someone says one thing about their beliefs, but then acts completely different. And that's where we deem the word hypocrite here. And it's probably not very often that we think of an actor as a hypocrite, though. When I first was studying this, and honestly, when I was thinking of what I was going to write today for today's devotion, and I looked up the word and where it came from, I first heard this and I was not pleased at all with it. And you can probably understand why. I mean, it's really due to my personal endeavors as a film and commercial actress and filmmaker. And so when your profession is to act, you want people to see that ambition in a very positive light. However, I can totally understand the origin of the word. You know, when you're thinking of an actor, whether it's in theater or film, an actor will put on this mask, if you will, and they'll portray this character that is not necessarily, what they normally live out. That's why they are acting. And so it's hypocritical. If you look at the origin of the words, an actor is a hypocrite because they're actually acting out something that is not their true self. And so I think it is safe to say that we have all experienced a hypocrite, and some of us may even be guilty of hypocritical behaviors ourselves in the true sense, not necessarily a professional actor getting hired to do something that is, not their true character. I'm talking about living and trying to portray a real part of our lives as this is who we truly are. Well, the men in this passage and in this story with Jeremiah, were hypocrites. They went to Jeremiah and they asked him to prophesy to them regarding their journey to Egypt. And they told Jeremiah that whatever God said, whether it was good or bad, they would obey. However, when God spoke through Jeremiah for them to not go to Egypt, these men called Jeremiah a liar. And instead, they went and they continued to do what was already purposed in their heart to do. I mean, that's the whole thing. We have things in our heart that we just really want to do. Like, that is our stubborn side of it. We just really want to do them. And, we'll say to God or to other people who are our mentors or whatever, like, taking instances to other people and saying, what would you do in this situation? Or do you have any advice for us in this situation? And then when they give advice, our hearts are so stubborn that we're not going to listen to them. We're just going to do our own thing anyway. That's in an sense, what's the point of having mentors? What's the point of going to somebody who you trust that hears the voice of God if you're not going to heed to that counsel? And so that's kind of in essence really what this trap is. These people had already purposed in their heart that they were going to Egypt, and they pretended like they were going to, care what Jeremiah was saying, but it was obvious that they did not care. They called Jeremiah a liar, and instead they continued moving forward to Egypt, and clearly they disobeyed God. We later read in the scripture that these men were captured, and that is exactly what God said would occur if they disobeyed him and they continued in this journey to go to Egypt. I mean, I hope and pray that we as Christ followers listen to the voice of God, whether it is a pleasant thing to hear or an unpleasant thing to hear, or whether it's something that we want to happen or not want to happen, or whether we disagree or not. I hope that we get to a place where we listen and obey to the voice of God, no matter what is being told us, pleasant or unpleasant. And it's not a matter of just listening and hearing. It's a matter of following through in obedience with our actions. And I pray that we are not acting in our faith and our walk. And I pray that we are not just going through the motions and making people think that we're one way when actually we are a different way. I hope that we are not acting in the scenes called faith and called life. One of the things that comes to mind is the fact that there's so many things going on right now in culture and in the church, the body of Christ, and just various church, bodies, where there's pastors who are getting caught and leaders who are getting caught in lifestyles that are perverted, whether that's watching pornography or whether that's actual sexual misconduct. Whatever that is, they're acting. They are actors. And I never want to be an actor in my faith. I want to be real and true and integrous. And it's sad to know that there are people out there that are like that. And obviously we've all had our hypocritical moments, I'm sure, where we say one thing and do another. I mean, that's in essence hypocritical. And hopefully we learn from that one time, but hopefully we don't just continually live this way day in and day out and day in and day out, because you saw the destruction of what happened. I mean, God clearly told these men, if you go to Egypt, you are going to get captured. If you go to Egypt, this is what's going to happen. And, so many times people, aren't taking God serious. They don't take God serious. They don't take the realness of God serious. And so therefore they're like, nah, I don't believe it. It's not going to happen, or it's not going to happen to me, and that's when we get into a danger zone. So today's challenge to dig deeper. is to be courageous and say to God, whatever you say to me, whether pleasant or unpleasant, I will do it. And ask him to search your heart and to clean out anything that keeps you from fully obeying him, even if it means turning around from where you're headed or stopping an endeavor that you have started that was clearly not something that he wanted you to do in the first place. It could mean that you need to stop it and let God just kind of start things all over again for you. You know, the reality of it is I love being an actor when it comes to the professional side of things. I love it so much. I love being in commercials. I love being in films. I love portraying roles, especially those that are so opposite of who I am. You know, I've learned so much from those roles, and there's been a couple of episodes where I've talked about them, you know, and I've been interviewed on other podcasts and been able to share some of those experiences and some of those opportunities where I get to act and portray a role that is different than I. But that's a different subject when we're actually doing it, you know, for a purpose. But when we're being an actor on a Sunday morning and saying one thing and behaving another, or when we come home from church and treat our family one way and, you know, people think that we're another way, those are situations where God needs to do some work in our lives. And so I don't want to be an actor in true life scenarios. I want to be an actor on film and set, but not in a true life situation. And so my challenge to you to dig deeper is to really focus on knowing that if we say that we have faith, if we are Christ followers and we have faith in God, then we have to take that faith and act on it. And so whatever God says, whether it's unpleasant or pleasant, to commission in our hearts to do it and to not be an actor in our faith. And tonight, when you pull your journal out and you are reflecting on this conversation that you are going to have with God, write it down. And were there any hypocritical areas in your heart that God needed to address? Was there any area in your life that you say, you know what, I do this, but I say this, and God shines a light on it and exposes it? And that is where, you know, we have to be open continually to God's voice. Are you being an actor in any area of your faith? I hope today inspired you, and you know, I hope that you never feel condemned or that you never feel like, you know, you're less than because you make a mistake, or, you know, that you're not perfect in all of your ways, right? Because only Jesus can be that way. I hope that you are continually inspired to take these stories that I'm sharing in this devotional and continue to apply it to your everyday life and continue to grow in it, because ultimately that's what we want to do, is we want to have the areas of our lives, the areas of our hearts exposed that are not conducive for his kingdom. And this is just one area where, you know, if we are saying one thing and doing another in our faith, that is being hypocritical and we're being an actor in our faith. And that is not something that I want for anyone, because we have lives to change. We have lives to change out there, right? And we have lives to influence, and we have people to grow and children to raise and husbands to love and wives to love. And, you know, we want to be the best that we can possibly be. And dealing with little issues, you know, that I talk about every day is one way to do it. So if you don't have my devotional, just go to the show notes, click on that link, and order your devotional, order your copy today, and be sure. And if you don't have a journal and you want a companion journal, the link for that is also in the show notes. And until tomorrow, keep rinsing, reflecting, and repeating. God bless you.